Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are discussing the high stakes world enterprise technology deliver. In 2026, many organizations blame their software for failed transformations, but the truth usually lies in the human architecture behind the screen. Joining us today is Tim Holter, Vice President of Delivery at S4A IT Solutions. With nearly 3 decades in the SAP ecosystem, Tim has delivered over 50 large scale projects, from launching Saskatchewan's first internet cafe to rescuing high risk global initiatives. He blends a background in psychology with an entrepreneurial mindset to cut through technical complexity. So, before further ado, let's welcome this very special guest. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Now, before we get into the how of project delivery, I'd love to ground our listeners in the who, right? So, it's clear that S4A isn't just, focused on the code, but on the practical business outcomes as well. So, I'd love for you to take this opportunity and educate our listeners about S4A IT Solutions and the specific role that you play in helping businesses navigate their digital journeys.
You betcha. So S4A IT Solutions has been around in the SAP ecosystem for approximately, I think it's around 7 years. I've been around for about three and a half years of that journey here as the VP of Delivery. We focus primarily on the modernization and mobilization of key processes within the SAP Enterprise Resourcing Package software. So as you can imagine, that is very much focused on the people side. So how are the end users going to use the system? How are they going to, how easy is it to use? We try to make it just a great experience for them. So at the end of the day, when you're out in the field in a disconnected environment and you need to actually, capture good data against your maintenance activities or material consumption or what have you sort of thing, the users are actually using the system. You're getting that good data into the back-end system. So in order to make informed and accurate business decisions based off of that data. So that's where we like to play. And it's primarily in the SAP area and in large asset heavy industries.
It's great to have that context now for our listeners as well. And, as I mentioned, it's clear that S4A isn't just focused on the code, but on the practical business outcomes that the technology is supposed to deliver. And speaking of outcomes, let's look at why those outcomes are so often missed. Now, Tim, you've spent 30 years in delivery, right? And have a reputation for project rescues. You often challenge the idea that technology is the primary reason that projects fail, right? So, based on your experience in the field, why do major implementations often struggle or fail even when the organization has the right technical systems in place? So, where's the missing piece?
That's a great question. At the end of the day, the implementation of any large IT system, whether it's Office 365 or something infinitely more complicated like an ERP system that's handling your finances, your cost management, controlling material consumption, all that sort of good stuff. It's really rooted in the solving of a business problem. And at the core of these business problems, there's three main components: people, process, and technology. All right. So you could have the best mousetrap in the world, and if it's not easy to use and it was engineered with spikes all over it, sort of thing,
no one's going to adopt it.
No one's going to want to use it, right? And then guess what? That whole two parts of that three-part equation in terms of process and technology, the processes are defined by people and the technology's invented and defined by people. So really, if you think about it, it's all about the people side. And it's somewhere along the line, somebody thought putting those spikes on that mouse trap was a really, really good idea because, hey, it's going to get that mouse at the end of the day. But they didn't really think about the end user, how they're going to be able to use that trap to catch the mouse. So I know it's a silly analogy, but it's something ERPs are very, very complex. So I just try to simplify the analogy. So.
Definitely very well articulated. And I agree with you. Recognizing that misalignment between people is the true silent killer of technology investments. It shifts the entire approach from installing software to enabling an organization, right? And it's a mindset
Mm-hmm.
thing that needs to be changed. Now, let's explore how human behavior impacts project execution. So, from your psychological background and extensive experience that you have, how does understanding the human side of delivery help you navigate the inevitable challenges and the friction points that arise during, a complex project?
For sure. In terms of the people side of things, you're going to have to understand what motivates people. At the end of the day, everybody that's involved in one of these large ERP implementations is trying to do the right thing and what they believe is the right thing. Do they all have a shared vision? Not necessarily. Some people will have, be really jazzed about the technology. Hey, this new thing's coming down the pipe. I'm super excited to be using it. Some
Hmm.
people might be very reluctant in using
Yeah.
it because they see it as a threat to their job. Other people are just, major detractors. So it's all about stakeholder management and understanding the stakeholders that are involved at all levels, right? From the executive buy-in, so they could see that the senior leadership is actually vested in this implementation, through
Hmm.
to the line managers, through to the people that are actually going to be using the system for their day-to-day operations. So, right up front, what you need to do is you need to set the right expectations. What are we trying to accomplish? And why are we doing this? How is it going to better the organization? How is it going to better your day-to-day job at the end of the day? Right. And you have to be transparent and you have to communicate early and often. Right. So
Yeah.
that's right up front. Expectation setting can go a long, long way to curbing some of the gotchas during an implementation. And then at other phases, you're going to focus the message differently. So that's right up front. Why are we doing this? Who's involved? And what are the benefits? And
Hmm.
then during the design phase, you might be using a common off the shelf type of system, or you're trying to adhere to the out of the box best practices for something like SAP, which is a standard way of doing accounts payable, accounts receivable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to educate people on how the system's going to affect their job. And then
Hmm.
you also have to solicit their input, right? I've been part of implementations that have gone completely sideways where they tried to standardize the process across the entire organization, including the field.
Hmm.
And they had dozens of fields locations and they had representation, but the end users didn't necessarily have a voice. And those projects went terribly wrong. And so we had to do, a rescue project at the end of the day, post go live, to really solicit the input of those end users. Because again, if that mousetrap has spikes on it, no one's going to want to use it. No one's going to
Yeah.
pick it up, and adoption is going to be terrible.
No, makes a lot of sense because, and you make a great point because successful delivery is less about a perfect plan on paper and more about building the trust and, the psychological safety that allows a team to adapt to reality. So, thank you so much for sharing those insights with our audience. Now, let's look at the practical habits behind successful implementations. So, I'm sure from your extensive experience, you've also come across so many people doing the same repetitive mistakes, right? So, what are the most common implementation mistakes you see organizations make? And what practical habits should they adopt instead to, ensure success? So, what's your recommendation?
Honestly, I could probably spend hours on this topic versus just mere minutes.
Uh-huh.
And, at the risk of sounding like a consultant, it depends. Surprise, surprise. Right. Again, like I said before, at various different phases of the project, it really depends. Again, I'm never going to let up on that expectation setting, right? You need to do that. You need to solicit input. And now, of course, these projects more and more need to be fast, right? They can't be your traditional ERP implementation where it takes years on end in order to get things done. And so if you go in with that expectation setting and a solid methodology, right,
Hmm.
on and a, a prescriptive methodology that has proper project governance, you should ideally be ready for anything. As you said, the plans look good on paper. I like to say no plans survives first contact with the enemy. And guess what? We are the enemy at the end of the day.
Right.
And so practical habits are one, being open, making sure that you have a solid organizational change management plan that focuses on communication and stakeholder management. You identify those stakeholders up front, and you have a plan to keep all those people either informed or consulted, depending on their level of influence and impact on the project at the end of the day. And and then during the build, once you've come to a point, it all depends on whether you're going waterfall or agile methodology. When you come to the point of putting fingers on keyboard and configuring the system, testing it, possibly doing some enhancements because you got some secret sauce that you want represented in the system versus the standard out of the box. Scope control, scope control, scope control. I could be called Dr. No, and it's not necessarily no, it's not right now, right? Put it in a parking lot. People need to be heard. Otherwise, they will start becoming detractors. Put it in a parking lot and say, you know what? This is only the start of the journey, and we're going to be doing a continuous improvement program after go live and keep the system evergreen because the business needs change. Once they start using the system, they're going to see other things that they can take advantage of, right? So
Definitely,
really scope control
yeah.
and project methodology goes a long way.
So great insights from Dr. No right there. And building on what you said, Tim, I'd like to give a special message now to all of our listeners, specifically to all the business leaders watching. In 2026, your tech is only as good as the people using it. Tim and the team at S4A IT Solutions are preparing for the release of ARC, a brand new solution specifically designed to bridge the gap between asset management and supply chain operations. If you are struggling to get real value out of the systems you already have, it's time to stop looking at the screen and start looking at your workflows. Visit s4a.ca to learn how their practical, human centered approach can turn your next transformation into a measurable success. Now, coming back to you, Tim, building a culture of stakeholder involvement from day one, as you mentioned, it ensures the final product reflects the operational reality of the front line, right? Not just the requirements of the boardroom. So, great points there. Moving ahead into the conversation, let's now explore bridging the gap between planning and field execution, right? So it's one thing just talking about something, and another thing actually going and doing it. So, from that perspective, how can businesses better align their planning teams with end users to ensure that their technology is actually driving that efficiency that they're hoping for?
That's a really great question. And it's something that a lot of organizations struggle with, right? Especially they know they have a problem. That's why they're implementing this ERP or possibly enhancing the ERP. That's where we like to play, right? I've done a lot of greenfield implementations, but a large portion of my career has actually been grounded in enhancing already existing SAP implementations and making it better at the end of the day. So they know they have a problem, but it's hard to quantify, right? Because a lot of these organizations don't necessarily pay attention to the lead time that they're experiencing from vendors on receiving materials for consumption on the production floor or in their maintenance activities, for example. So, and then I come along and go, all right, how long did that take before? And they're like, I don't know. I just have a squeaky wheel. And I'm just going to put some money at it. I'm going to put a project against it, and that wheel will stop squeaking at the end of the day. Other organizations take a little bit more thoughtful approach, and actually, as they're building out the business case, they do those before metrics, and this is invaluable. So they can actually go, okay, this is what our turnaround time on, material receipt before the project happened, and then the project happens, and then they basically read the data over a longer period of time, and then that helps them justify it at the end of the day and see, okay, we were expecting a 20% increase in efficiencies, we only got 10%. Why? Is it end user adoption, so on and so forth. That's really at the nut of it, of how you can determine whether what you're implementing is going to be, give you quantifiable increases in efficiency. Some of the stuff, though, can't not necessarily be measured by data, right? For example, end user satisfaction, right? That
Right.
can be adopted. You can figure that out through adoption rates. Going out and actually just polling them, sort of thing. We had a
Right.
fairly large oil and gas organization that did just that. They ran a whole project actually after the work order management system had been live for a while. They went out there and talked to the field operations people and
Mhm.
go, "What about this is causing you pain?" And they came back with just a raft of requirements, and that was a really great project. We partnered with them. It was a good 5 to 6 month project enhancing the already existing system that we had implemented for them years before.
Mhm.
And it was actually an award-winning project internally in their organization.
Wow.
And so that I found that really satisfying, because at the end of the day, we're making not only the data capture in the field, because they could have used it the way it was, but they knew that their end users were not having the best experience that they could have. So it's gathering that before data and
Mhm.
then ideally comparing it over a longitudinal period of time against what they're experiencing in the system, because they have all the data on hand, right, to
Yeah.
do that analysis.
Thank you for sharing that anecdote, firstly. And I think mobilizing those key workflows, it ensures that your technology investment, it translates into a connected and actionable business strategy, right?
Right.
On that note, Tim, let's do a little time travel now. Imagine if I
Okay.
were to give you a time machine right now and we were to go 5 or 10 years into the future. When you get out of the time machine, how exactly would you envision the world of technology delivery evolving, when you get out? What do you see? Paint the picture for our audience.
Wow. Yeah, it's timely too. I don't know if you know this, but the SAP is having one of their annual sales events called Sapphire right now in Florida. So I was just
Oh,
listening in on some of what they're pitching at the end of the day,
uh-huh.
and it's all about AI, agentic
Mm-hmm.
AI in particular. A couple of years
Right,
ago, it was about general AI, LLMs, robotic process
right.
automation. That's now evolved into agentic AI. Um, Time will tell. I hate to say I'm not a seer. I don't have a time machine, as you say. I've been in IT for over 30 years, right? So 29 of that being an SAP consultant, and then prior to that doing tech support. And again, like other kids were going to computer camp. I was going to, or I should say, other kids were going to sports camp. I was going to computer camp in the 80s,
Oh,
right? And so 80s was the
okay.
advent of computers or personal computers. And then the 90s, the internet just blew everything away. And then the thousands, 2000s were pretty stable. Of course, we had that little thing called COVID-19 that basically showed that we could all work from home. We don't need to necessarily be in place. And
Yeah.
and then, of course, everything's gone from private servers sitting under someone's desk or on a rack somewhere to cloud everything. And now in the 2020s, late 2020s, we have the advent of AI. I can imagine 10 years from now, the team isn't just necessarily made up of people. There's other team members that have ideally proper guardrails and without the hallucinations that we know happen in AI right now. That technology is going to evolve in such a way that you've got this blended team of people and AI, agentic AI delivering, right? And where it
Mm.
makes sense. So, as for what's next, who knows? Could be wearable computing, especially in the area of field operations. Possibly, you've got smart glasses, and they can pull up diagrams of whatever's going wrong. You snap a picture of a broken device, and it gets triaged right away. So there's not a lot of guesswork involved at the end of the day. Those are the kind of powers that AI can bring to the table.
Still, you painted quite a picture there with those insights. And even though, as you said, the future, no one knows what the future looks like, because every day we are waking up to so many new
Hmm.
things happening every single day. But still, it's great to know that there's hope of us becoming a much better world at the end of the day, right? So,
That's the idea. Yep.
yes. Now, Tim, I'm loving this conversation today. And, how passionate you are about the things that you talk. It's clearly evident. Your eyes spark when you talk about all these things. And I'd love for us to do this again, hopefully for an in-person episode that we do the next with you.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, I'll be looking forward to that. But for now, Tim, before we, finally let you go for this episode, if there's one final piece of advice that you have for our listeners today, something that you want to let them know, if you could whisper one thing into their ear for someone who is too overwhelmed or don't know where to start from, what advice would you give and why?
We have this kind of saying. So I'm part of a executive coaching group where we get together. It's called Tech, the Executive Committee Canada. It's a great peer support group for people that are leading in various different industries.
Mm-hmm.
We have a saying. It's like, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Right.
Mm.
And
Wow.
given how fast technology is advancing right now, how fast AI is evolving, people are hard to manage. That's why not everybody's really into doing that as a career. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and
Right.
be okay with it, right? And be open to new ideas and learning. You always have to learn. So
That is a great reminder that, no matter what work you do, at the end of the day, if you don't have the clarity, um, and the hope within yourself to start with, there's beautiful things waiting for you to happen. Tim, it was such a pleasure having you for this podcast. Thank you so much for being here and doing this with us today.
oh well, thank you, and it was a pleasure.
All right, that was Tim Holter from S4A IT Solutions, a masterclass in why people, not just process, drive success in 2026. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more such resources. To learn more about how we are supporting the ecosystem, please visit the Canadian SME Small Business Foundation at smbfoundation.ca. And lastly, a very special thank you to our partners, UPS and ADP, for their ongoing commitment to empowering SMBs across Canada. So until next time, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.